Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, the home of slightly above average FPL video content. Today we are going to be taking an in-depth look at some 2020 January transfers, whether they are worth considering for our FPL teams, and try to help you get on some of the differential players nice and early. So, first of all, who has been added to the game over the past month? As you can see, a whole bunch of players from a whole bunch of clubs, but the first thing you'll notice is that they all have really low prices. Why? Because they're mostly just fodder. Let's start by weeding out the players we're not interested in. So, bye-bye to all the players that aren't even guaranteed to make the bench on their teams. If you can't get in a relegation-threatened side, then you're no good for me. Big see you later to the defensive midfielders. We all know that they're useless from an FPL point of view. See you later. And then there's some players who aren't really guaranteed enough game time. We don't want to risk bringing in those players who are just going to come in for 1 point off the bench every week. We don't want them. And then, well, there's Pepe Reina, legend of the game, but do you trust Aston Villa's back line? I certainly don't. Tosin, who is injured right now, I'm not even sure if his place at Palace is nailed yet. Duda, who looks like a nice little player, but looking at his stats, I can't really come up with a convincing argument to buy him at all, really. So that just really leaves Samatta, Bruno Fernandes, Ighalo, Rose, Walker Peters, Bergwijn and Bowen. We've narrowed it down to just 7 players that are worth considering for your team. So, today, let's provide you with some analysis as to why they're on my mind, starting with the 7th best option and working our way towards the best. In 7th place, it's Danny Rose. Now, there's 2 things I like immediately when I look at this FPL asset. First of all, he should be nailed on playing left back, almost in a left midfield position for Newcastle, despite being a defender. Secondly, Newcastle have an excellent run of 7 fixtures coming up between game weeks 27 and 33, where they could keep plenty of clean sheets. But in order to do that, he should really first displace Matt Ritchie from the team, which he has yet to do technically. You would expect it to happen, but it's a wait and see scenario on that front. So why is he 7th on my list? Well, it's the price. I don't think I can justify spending 5.3 on a Newcastle defender when I could just easily buy Lascelles, Federico Fernandez and Kieran Clark. They're all under 4.5 million, so I'm just going to pick one of those up instead. It's not worth that 0.8 million for me. You can just get a little bit more for that money, or you hope to get a little bit more for that money. That said, if Rose can nail his place, you could certainly do worse as a punt. Odion Ighalo is my number 6, and you might be thinking, a Manchester United striker that only costs 6.5 million. It's a no-brainer. Get him in your team, right? Well, in FPL terms, we need to stop thinking about Man United as that old Man United. The fact is that far superior attackers than Ighalo have come to United and flopped. Falcao, Lukaku, Sanchez, Depay, even Martial, to be fair, with a complete lack of creativity in this side, consistently unpredictable results, and a game plan based around counter-attacking teams that are better than them. Why would an average Premier League striker who has spent the past few years just aging and playing against Chinese farmers, why would that change Man United? I don't think he's going to be the kind of world-beating player at that club. And that's if he even plays. Martial has been nailed up front when fit, and it's very possible that Ighalo has just been brought in to cover those Europa League games as a rotation option. Now, I would try and consider his stats from the past few seasons to see if he's worth bringing in, but do Chinese Super League stats really count for much? He scored 46 in 72 in the CSL and finished as the league's 2nd top scorer in 2018. To be fair to him, you can only beat what's in front of you, but that doesn't really help us in FPL. He also scored 15 goals in the Premier League for Watford in the 2015-2016 season. But again, that's not incredibly useful, just given how long ago it was. Look, there are a lot of worse striking options, and if he plays, he might be worth a punt. The price is really good after all, but he's firstly got to nail himself a spot in the Premier League games for Manchester United. It is a really risky one right now. Jarrod Bowen is at number 5, and I like Jarrod Bowen, mainly because I always buy him on FIFA for his wand of a left foot. For Hull City in the Championship, he has done fantastically, netting 38 league goals in the past season and a half. For a winger, That is absolutely insane returns. He plays on the right, cutting in almost as a second striker. He's basically the Salah of East Yorkshire. He loves a shot, he can score with his head, and if he can continue his form from the Championship and bring that grit and determination needed in that league into a relegation battle, you'd expect him to be amongst the goals if he can displace Snodgrass at right wing, or even become a sort of a second striker next to Creative Haller. That would be an insane striking partnership, so maybe that could be a thing. If West Ham weren't so rubbish, he would be a much better option. But right now, I'm sorry West Ham fans, but you are kind of rubbish. And again, this is a really risky one, as most new signings are, to be fair. But if he starts next game and maybe gets a goal or assist or something, I think that might be enough justifications for a hype train to start. It could happen. Mbwana Samatta is, I think, the fourth best option for FPL out of the January transfers anyway. He's already played a game, he's already scored in that game, so by that logic, he's a goal per game player, am I right? I'm just kidding, of course, but I do like Samatta. He is the only Villa striker available right now, so he's guaranteed to start. Aston Villa do actually create a few chances, mainly through Grealish, and before Samatta, they didn't really have a good quality striker to finish them off. He managed 3 shots in his debut game and created 2 key chances as well, so he could offer a bit of assist potential too, you never know. Now, aside from this one game, Samatta is a bit of an unknown quantity coming in from the Belgian league with an above average goal scoring record, I guess. Though he has scored 3 goals in the Champions League this season, so yeah, you know, that's something. But that is the exact profile of Christian Benteke when he first arrived at Villa, and he did phenomenally. You know, just a striker from the Belgian league. You don't really know who he is. He comes in and does amazingly. Aston Villa are a team that go for it, and they want to score goals, often at the expense of their defence. And you'd expect more of that towards the end of the season. You know, as they fight relegation, Samatta could be worth taking a gamble on, especially when Villa have that double game week that they are guaranteed now sometime after their blank in game week 28. Number 3 is Kyle Walker-Peters, and I do think he is a very good option. I know he's not going to be a game-changing addition to your team, he's not an exciting player to bring in, but he certainly is a very good option. Southampton have improved defensively massively throughout the season, and they actually had 3 clean sheets in the 6 games before their match against Liverpool. That's not too bad at all. Kyle Walker-Peters should be nailed on at right back, considering Southampton, well, Southampton don't actually have any other right backs in their squad. Recently, they've had to play James Ward-Prowse out of position, and I'm sure they'll be very keen to get a proper fullback in there. That's even if James Ward-Prowse is fit. Add to that Southampton's great run of fixtures. Walker-Peters is a great price of 4.4 million. This could be your cheapest way into the Southampton defence if you don't have McCarthy. We also know that Walker-Peters has some attacking threat too. At the end of last season, when he was getting a bit of a game time for Spurs, he registered 3 assists in 374 minutes of game time. That's an assist every 124 minutes and almost an assist per game. Perhaps once he can get some regular playing time again, he can continue his creative exploits. Not the most exciting player to add to your fantasy team, I get it, but definitely a great shout if you're looking for a cheap differential defender. Number 2 is a bit more exciting, Bruno Fernandes. So I've spoken a little bit already about how I think Man United are rubbish in FPL right now, and I do maintain that belief, and that's why Bruno Fernandes isn't number 1 basically. But that is because they have no major creative force in that United team. Bruno Fernandes is that major creative force if he doesn't go through the usual Man United treatment and have an epic Man United flop. The fact that he could flop is another thing holding me back from making this guy number 1, because he really is quality. In his debut game, he was a little bit disappointed. He did take 5 shots, however, and he looks like he could be on set pieces too. But it's his performances in Portugal that make this player look so mouth-watering. In 25 appearances for Sporting this season, he's scored 15 goals and got 8 assists, which is basically a goal contribution per game. He's the kind of player a team is built around, and if he can nail the spot as United's central attacking midfielder, you just know that so many goals are going to go through him. I mean, they're not going to go through Fred or Andreas Pereira, are they? Man United have an excellent run of games from game week 30 all the way to the end of the season, and early Bruno Fernandes adopters could see themselves rewarded heavily during this period. He's definitely on my watch list, and I cannot wait to see if Bruno blossoms into the fantasy assets he could be. Number 1 is Steven Bergwijn. Yes, that is how you pronounce his name. Think the wine bit in Wijnaldum. And right now, at this moment, I think he is the most viable signing of all the January transfers in FPL. In his debut against Man City, he scored an absolute banger, netting himself 10 fantasy points for the game. But what really stood out to me was his positioning. Playing in a Spurs team that likes to score goals, he was the furthest midfielder forward, playing sort of inside left, pretty much as a second striker. He looked keen to make those cutting in runs, and given that his first game started immediately after signing in a really tough game, you would guess that he's firmly within Mourinho's plans. I mean, he's literally displaced Son on the left wing for a start. If you look at his stats from the Dutch league, however, it's very clear that his playmaking abilities are what really sets him apart. His average of 2.8 key passes per game converted into 10 assists in just 16 Eredivisie games. Add to that his 5 goals, and what we have got is a goal contribution per game player. Now, I know that league isn't as strong as the Prem, but what we do have here is a player who clearly loves to be involved with goals. Nailed on in a very attacking position, playing for a Big Six team, all for just 7.5 million. But believe me, he will not cost 7.5 million for much longer. More and more FPL players are jumping on the Bergwijn hype train, and he's definitely going to rise. He is the most transferred in of all of the January transfers. I can easily see him being a better option than Ali in terms of Spurs assets. He might even be at a better Son, especially given the price difference. So if you want to get just one January transferred player as an FPL differential, make it Steven Bergwijn. So that concludes my list of these newly transferred fantasy options. I really do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give a like and subscribe if you're new around here. Game week 26 has been a long one, so I hope this has kept you entertained whilst we wait for it to be over. My Game Week 27 preview video will be up next week as usual, but in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed watching something a little bit different just to pass the time. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later, mates.